welcome to Maggie Chats Books. Today I'm going to do my weekly wrap-up. This week I finished 3 books, and the first book I'll talk about is The Hidden Light of Objects. This was our Read Around the World Book Club book. It is a collection of short stories. I believe there are 10. Each story begins with a vignette, and they take place in Kuwait or about people from Kuwait. The first story is called Chinese Apples, and it really got me into this book quite a bit. I wanted to read the short stories quickly, but I decided just to do 1 or 2 a day. I have to say that story was really great. Not all of them were as good, which I think you find with most short story collections. The writing is very beautiful. I saw that some people said it's a bit too much or maybe too fanciful. It is in some places, but I didn't mind that. I have to say though, because I read This Is About Kuwait, I read this book with a feeling of dread, like something bad was going to happen. And although there are bad things that happen in this book, I felt that dread throughout the book. So I think it's just my foreshadowing something that made me feel this way. And if I had to describe it, I would say it was sad. Though I can't really say all the stories are sad. And that's what I put in my review because I just kind of struggled with this book. There are some great stories in here, or good stories, and there are some that I probably couldn't tell you what they were about if you asked me about it, even though I just read this book. Which I think happens with a lot of short story collections. You hit and miss with those. Overall, I think it was worth the read. I think it has some things that would be great for a book club where you could actually go back and forth to talk about it. I just finished this book so late this month, I really didn't take the time to ask if other people had the same reactions to certain things in the story. So my bad, but if you are in a book club and you can actually discuss these, probably as you read each story, I think it would be worth your while. So that's Hidden Light of Objects. The next book I finished was Cinder by Jeff Lemire and Dustin Nguyen. And this is a graphic novel. It takes place, of course, in a different world where robots have been outlawed because of an invasion. A robot wakes up and has been asleep for 10 years, and he's looking for his family because he was assigned to be a companion to a family. So you follow this little robot who apparently has some secrets within his code that he can help out the universe as it struggles with robots and being attacked and things like that. I found out as I was reading this, I wish it was a book and not a graphic novel. And I think because I don't enjoy graphic novels as much as books. I don't know why that is. I guess because there's so many pictures that you find yourself looking at them and I kind of lose my train of thought or something. And because there's pictures and everything like that, it's really very, very short. I read this in one sitting. I did enjoy the story. I wish it was not a graphic novel, although the pictures are great. I think it's just me. I've never been a comic book reader or anything like that. But I will continue with the series because I do like the story. I think it's cute. There's something about graphic novels always having to put in something that's really gory, and this one has something that didn't seem to really fit in the story, but like I said, it's pretty short, so you don't know if it's going to get worse. This was recommended by Rachel from Shades of Orange, and she has a very diverse taste in horror and science fiction and things like that. I think it's a good book, and I will continue with it. I just don't really care for graphic novels that much, which is kind of weird. Maybe I'll grow to like them, I don't know. And the last book that I finished was Pandemic by A.G. Riddle, and this was a audiobook. After I read Get Well Soon, which I talked about last week, it was a nonfiction book about plagues throughout history. It started with I think the Black Death and ends with AIDS, and it was really a great book. It really had a lot of research behind it, and it was done in such a way that I just really thought it was great. And I don't think I did a really great review last week about it, but I have to recommend that book if that is something that you are interested in, because it especially focuses on how the world at the time handled those pandemics. Now, when I read, then I decided to listen to the audiobook Pandemic, which is a fictional book. It also has the research behind it, and it deals with modern day where a pandemic has started. It starts in Africa, or it's first reported in Africa, and quickly spreads. The thing I like about this book is that it has a lot of research behind it. It also really shows you, despite all the preparation we have, especially in the United States for pandemics, once that happens, you don't know how the humans will react or how the governments will react. And sometimes it has to do with just one or two people in charge and things like that. So that was the great thing about this book. The audiobook, I believe, is 16 hours or 14 hours, but it went really fast. The thing about this book that probably people won't care for is that there's so much coincidence. There's a lot of love, interest kind of things, but not to the point where it gets too much. And then there's also kind of the thing that I don't care for in books is where somebody has lost their memory, and as they learn their memory, you get the backstory and all this kind of stuff. But with all that said, I did enjoy this book. I thought it was very engrossing. I thought it was light enough that you could just listen to it for pleasure. It reminded me a lot of a Dan Brown book or a Michael Crichton book, in that you went all over the world to solve this mystery and everything, and you're kind of beating the clock to get this resolved. I think on one part, it really showed probably more real case scenario of how a pandemic would be handled in the world today. But then on the other hand, there was an awful lot of stuff that you were like, well, really? I don't know if that would really happen. But it also ends with a kind of non-ending, because there's a second book, and this is the Extinction Files series, but I will read that one just to see how he wraps this all up. And I've read everything Dan Brown's put out, and I've read everything that Michael Crichton's put out, so I like that kind of book. I do. I know some people find it a little bit of waste of time, but for me, I liked it. But I will warn anybody that wants to listen to it or to read it that there's an awful lot of things that you kind of go, you kind of push the envelope on this one. But that's okay for me. So those are the 3 books I finished this week. If you read any of these, please let me know what you thought of them. What I'm reading now, I just started today actually, is Cannery Row by John Steinbeck. This is a book I have not read by him. I'm about 55 pages into it, and so far I'm enjoying it. There are some things about this book that really tells you when it was written, because some of the phrases he says about like minority groups, Polish people, and Hispanics living in the Cannery Row area, he uses terms to describe them that today would just be a no-no, and they were pretty common back then. He does a great job of describing Cannery Row so that you feel like you have been there before. He gives you an awful lot of description of the people that live in this area. So that's pretty much what I've gotten from it so far, and I'm anxious to see if I agree with a lot of the reviews that it's one of the best books that they've ever read. So far, I'm enjoying it. It's just some of the things at first I had to kind of sit back and go, wow, that is different than what you would get away with today, language-wise. So that's all I'm reading now. I'm trying to pick out an audiobook to listen to while I do some sewing, and then pick out one from my bookshelf that has been on there for a while, because I do want to clean out my TBRs and read some of the ones that have been there for a while. So that's all for now. Thank you so much for watching. I will talk to you later. Goodbye.